we are aiming to do is to be able to draw insights from everything that the doctor practices so that ultimately the care that he provides the patient can be improved at a population level. That's the mission that HealthPlix has. So essentially, what we are able to now do is patient and doctor have that conversation. There is no need for the doctor to type in anything. The voice is automatically converted into text and then converted into a prescription. Right, so we're able to do this, and because we are able to understand every word that the doctor has said, we're able to not only use the conversation to write the prescription, but also nudge the doctor based on previous history of the patient, but also the current conversation to then nudge the doctor about possible sort of diseases that the patient could progress towards. So what we can do there, a couple of things, right? One is we can give them collective intelligence on how doctors in India practice. So today we have roughly 3% of Indian population on the platform, thousands of doctors using it. So we're sitting on 101 million prescriptions. We also do what is called as a drug-to-drug interaction. So there are 3 drugs in the medication prescription, and 2 of them are not meant to be together.
So it automatically flags it off.
It flags it, and we are not sure how much to invest, right? And so for us, having a very flexible partner in AWS that allows us to commission machines quickly.
India's healthcare system faces many challenges. Let's zoom in on the most basic one: the doctor patient interaction. You get a prescription where you can't understand likha kya hai. The doctor neither gives you enough time nor has your patient records for a better diagnosis. Well, in samasyaon ka samadhan have been found by a startup with its apps that keep the doctor connected even if they are away. Hello and welcome to Crafting Bharat. It's your hyperlink to the high stakes world of startups in India that are solving problems of today and tomorrow. With me is an entrepreneur come marathoner whose brand is on a mission to make life easier for doctors. Let's hear what his prescriptions are for running an AI-powered healthcare business. Please welcome Chaitanya Raju, Executive Director and Chief Product Officer at HealthPlix. Chaitanya, great to have you on Crafting Bharat.
Great to be here as well. I had seen a lot of the episodes from the last season, loved it, loved what you're bringing to the startup ecosystem, and very glad today to be adding to it.
Oh, that's the best thing I can hear as an anchor for this show. And we, of course, cherish the opportunity to bring startup stories like yours. But picture abhi baki hai. Let's get into it. So, how did HealthPlix cure issues with digitizing healthcare to improve outcomes for both the doctor and the patient? Let's find out on our first segment titled Ignite. Chaitanya, I'm really looking forward to this conversation primarily for the reason that my nephew is studying to be a doctor. So some of the points that you will share over the course of this interview hopefully gives me something to tell him that things get better once you become a doctor thanks to the power of digitization. All right, let's begin the journey. HealthPlix was launched to digitize doctors' practice and improve patient health outcomes. Now, the insight, of course, was that the doctor's biggest problem is recollection of a patient's history and medical records. Now, that seeded the idea of doing something in the space of electronic medical records. But what strikes me as interesting is EMRs are standard in the US. So why not in India? What's causing the lag? What's causing the delay? And what did you do? What were your talking points to convince the initial cohort of doctors to use your service?
That's a very good question to start off with, right? Why isn't every doctor today already using a software, EMR software, to write prescriptions and so on? See, the way US did it is that they made it a mandate for doctors to digitize, and to be a doctor who's complying with law, you're required to digitize prescriptions, submit certain forms to the government, so on and so forth. And that's how they sort of got doctors to do it, right? But because they took that route, what happened is you ended up getting very average softwares that sort of did it's like it's good for bookkeeping, but it is not easy to sort of really draw insights from it to actually help improve care,
But
right?
we're
So
doing something similar now, right? Under the Ayushman Bharat digital mission, I think they are also trying to give it a mandate approach that you have to do it. Have we learned our lessons on that front?
sure, and they're actually thinking of it in the right fashion, right? So they're being careful about going with a mandate
Hmm.
and giving software like ours time to build software, that companies like us, right, to give us time to build software that can actually do more than just digitizing, right? What
Hmm.
we are aiming to do is to be able to draw insights from everything that the doctor practices, so that ultimately the care that he provides the patient can be improved at a population level. That's the mission that HealthPlix has. So
Hmm.
to do that, what you have to do is you have to be able to build a software that can uniquely get customized and personalized for the individual doctor based on what his or her needs are.
Hmm.
The expectation that the doctor, in addition to seeing 60 patients a day sometimes, the expectation that they should also digitize these notes uh, with, like, let's say an hour 2 hours a day to actually do it right, it's
Hmm.
unrealistic, right? So the way we think about it is the onus is on us, the tech companies, to make sure that we make it so easy for the doctor that it becomes like a formality for the doctor to use it. And once you do that, you will see that the digitization is broadly happening, right? A couple of years back, we ourselves were wondering if doctors will be willing to pay for the software. But
Hmm.
what we have seen, especially in the last 2 years, is that doctors are more than willing to pay for the software as long as you are making it easy for them to use the software. When they are interacting with the patient, the software doesn't add a layer of
So
disturbance.
friction has to be minimal. It has to be seamless. In fact, when I studied your company, the first thing that struck me that wouldn't it be wonderful to have solutions where it's talk to insights to outcome,
Hmm.
because as you say, a doctor is going to see an exponentially large number of patients. If there is an assistant that works in helping diagnose certain things, if say it has been missed out by the doctor, look at it from a preventative aspect, those are things which improve that value equation. And speaking of value equation, in an interview Sandeep had mentioned that what sets healthplix apart is the ability to directly address decision burnout problems faced by doctors at the point of care. This is a point I echo, because you have so many things going around. A, there is the regular burnout, then B, there is the decision burnout, because there's so many decisions that you need to take because you have a very significant impact on someone's life. So what impact do you see with AI enabled innovations like Halo that you've
Hmm.
released having on improving outcomes from a doctor perspective, which is from that burnout issue, and for the patient perspective, which is the access issue?
Sure. See, what Halo essentially is, it's ambient
Hmm.
voice to text conversion,
Hmm.
right? So essentially, what we are able to now do is a patient and doctor have that conversation.
Hmm.
There is no need for the doctor to type in anything. The voice is not automatically converted into text and then converted into a prescription,
Hmm.
right? So we're able to do this, and because we are able to understand every word that the doctor has said, we're able to not only use the conversation to write the prescription, but also nudge the doctor based on previous history of the patient, but also the current conversation, to then nudge the doctor about possible sort of diseases that the patient could progress towards,
Hmm.
right? So what is it? Typically, if you take diabetes or cardio, for example, right? Typically, if years into diabetes, if it's not properly managed, certain symptoms show up and it leads to chronic kidney failure, for example, right?
Hmm.
So what we are able to do is, let's say there are 100 doctors going to 100 patients going to a doctor,
Hmm.
we are able to identify who are the 5% of those who are at a high risk to kidney failure,
Hmm.
and we're able to prompt the doctor while he's treating the patient that this patient is at a high risk. Ultimately, it's the doctor's decision to test, but we prompt the doctor with that information, right?
Hmm.
So now the doctor can rely on our software to provide him with the right nudges for him to sort of just think through while he's treating the patient. And this has been superbly successful because today, of all the nudges we provide to doctors, about 25% of them
Hmm.
the doctors accept. So if you
Okay.
say do a chronic kidney disease test,
Hmm.
the doctor is accepting that nudge, and about 85% of the time the patient is actually gotten the disease already,
Hmm.
right? So we're able to catch something at a very early stage, and for a kidney patient, it is a massive difference, because it's a difference between treating a kidney problem to a sort of looking for a kidney
You
transplant.
catch it at an early stage, there's
Absolutely
going to
right.
be improved outcomes. So while these nudges help the doctor do a lot of predictive health outcomes from a patient app perspective, what are the changes coming about which can help things for them? And broadly, from a product roadmap perspective, what are the new enhancements and advancements that you are looking at to see these are the possibilities that excite us?
Sure. See, on the patient side, one critical aspect is to just have all of your prescriptions in one place. I mean, that itself is a huge deal, right? Oftentimes, you see patients going to the doctor with a big file
Hmm.
where he's just sort of trying to find the prescription there, right? So, having a patient app with a digitized prescription and the summary of those prescriptions beautifully summarized for the doctor to see
Hmm.
is a massive value add. So this patient can then go to a specialist or to a different doctor and just open up the app and give a very quick summary of the history.
Hmm.
That itself has a massive impact on patient health. Beyond that, the nudges that we provide to doctors are
Hmm.
also provided to the patient. What we
Hmm.
can do is we can see you've had diabetes for the last few years. Your sugar levels are not on track, and we think that you are likely to have a bigger problem.
Hmm.
You should go see a doctor immediately. We
Hmm.
don't go into the business of actually diagnosing because that's the doctor's job, but we're able to identify the risk and nudge the patient to go see a doctor. We can also nudge the patient to actually take your medications or get certain tests done, which will sort of help the patient manage his or her own health.
Hmm.
Right. So these are various ways in which it can be a game changer for patients to be on our app.
I have a follow up to that, Chaitanya, because when I think about it from a patient perspective itself, right? Second opinions.
Mhm.
There's always some of those doubts. A doctor prescribes something for a condition. You wonder, is this the right way to go? You think that's a space you would want to explore, especially in terms of converting data insights into, say, actionable outcomes?
Sure. It's a very good question, and I really like how you're thinking about this problem in healthcare. So it's very valid, right? Patient tends to have a lot of questions about what treatment the doctors recommended and so on. So what we can do there, a couple of things, right? One is we can give them collective intelligence on how doctors in India practice. So
Hmm.
today we have roughly 3% of Indian population on the platform, thousands of doctors using it. So we're sitting on 101 million prescriptions,
Hmm.
right? So we can build a lot of collective intelligence on treatment protocols that can then be provided to the patient. So you can say 70% of doctors recommend this treatment for this condition and so on. So that sort of information can be provided. Outside of that, you can also provide government approved clinical protocols for specific
Hmm.
conditions. Things like diabetes, cardio, there are standard protocols that doctors are required to follow. So that will be sort of additional information that patients can have, which gives them the comfort to sort of pursue the treatment doctors recommend.
It's amazing to see how intelligence enables outcomes in this healthcare space. And there's lots of magic in store as we go along in this data revolution. But meanwhile, it's time to check up on a few other aspects of expanding a business while retaining a customer base with some cues from HealthPlix on our next segment titled Launch. All right, Chaitanya, HealthPlix counts, I think, a customer base of over 15,000 doctors
Mhm.
across many cities in India with support for 20 plus, I think, regional languages. How do you
Mhm.
make sure that doctors are engaged and retained on HealthPlix? Because this is something I would wonder as a doctor. You'll have a cohort of users. My doctor in my area, he's very pro digital, but there might be others who say there's a UX issue, UI issue, and the time spent is not enough to develop that consumer habit. Tell us about some of the tips and tricks you use on that front.
Sure. So, the way we always thought about our work is it's our responsibility to make sure that the software is easy for doctors to use, right? Like I said earlier, the owners cannot be on a very busy doctor to also do administrative work on top of treating patients. So the software has to sort of merge and get customized automatically, beautifully for what the doctor needs, right?
Hmm.
So we have a highly customizable software to begin with, but then we also have AI driven learning algorithms that are able to make quick suggestions to the doctors that support his typical prescription behavior, right? So we make
Hmm.
it super easy for doctors to use the software. I mean, that's the basic thing that we have to meet before any doctor starts using it. Now, outside of that, we have to also help him manage his entire practice. If the doctor has a pharmacy, we have a pharmacy module for it. If the doctor has a front desk who takes appointments, patient registration, we have that digitized as well, because there's no point in just getting the doctor to digitize. You have to digitize the entire clinic, right? So we do that as well. So once he's on the software, the entire clinic runs on the software, which makes it easy for him to sort of do his day-to-day business, right? So his entire business, including billing and all of that, is managed on the software, which is critical. And finally, we have to help him with his decision burnout, which you talked about, right? These nudges. We help him with what we call as clinical decision support, which are identifying risks of patients, getting newer diseases and so on and so forth. We also do what is called as a drug-to-drug interaction. So if there are three drugs in the medication prescription, and two of them are not meant to be together,
So it automatically flags it
it
off.
flags it. Right there, the adoption rate of doctors is close to 50%. So 50% of the time when we show a drug-to-drug interaction, they change the medication.
Absolutely.
Right? So these sort of value-added things on the medical side go a long way in doctor adoption as well as retention in the long
The
term.
interesting way I see it is that for your sector, being regulated is actually a boon for you when it comes to converting insights into action. Like you said, if I had by mistake prescribed two medications which are conflicting, that is going to be a significant risk for my career as a doctor if something goes wrong. But if there is that data support, it a prevents that decision burnout. B, there is an exchange, immediate exchange of value. You help me do that. You saved a lot of heartaches. Fine, I'll give you more time. Any interesting examples from this whole doctor cohort? Any interesting ways in which they have used your app?
Yeah, I mean, there are, depending on the specialty, you'll see a lot of these things play out, right? In fact, during COVID, we had a doctor who was able to treat, I think, in that scenario, close to 1,000 patients a day,
Wow.
both digital as well as physical.
This is a Guinness World Record of some sort.
Absolutely right. We did a release on that as well, because he was able to sort of quickly write prescriptions. And COVID had some standard ways to treat people, right? So you have to sort of assess whether the person has it, whether the person what sort of treatment is required, and quickly do that, right? And so he was able to sort of operate at a very high scale quickly because the software is available to him, and treat patients all over the country with that, right? So we also had a scenario where there was a young kid who during lockdown was not able to travel out to the bigger city near Delhi to see the doctor. So the teleconsultation feature where you can consult a doctor in a bigger city, what we call as a big doctor module, that also was great to see, because the only way that kid could have gotten treated during that time was by consulting a doctor online, right? So these sort of stories are there all the time. We prevent, by catching chronic kidney disease early, we prevent roughly 2,000 kidney transplants a month,
Oh, wow.
right? So that sort of impact you can have. While these are nudges, these are preventive nudges that we do, these have massive impact on patient lives. And if you think about it at a country level, a big burden is reduced on the health infrastructure when we do such things.
Now, speaking of impact, it's great that technology drives impact, but funding is also one of the drivers of impact. You need to make sure that you have enough fuel in the tank to make sure you're going where you need to be. In that context, startups in the EMR domain have found recent times to be challenging. So, what I want to know from you next is how have you made the most of your $40 million funding runway raised from a host of investors? Any advice, any tips that you would offer to many of our viewers who could be potential startup founders tomorrow? How do you make the most of your funding?
Sure. See, the key to a startup success always is to stay focused on your customer and the specific problem they're trying to solve. Right. Oftentimes, you'll see a lot of waves in the market. But I think it's important for you to stay focused on your vision and your mission, what you're trying to do, and the problem you're trying to solve. I think that's important, not to get distracted by.
That's the tent pole view. In terms of strategies, what do you do?
Of course, so I'm saying that's important. The reason I bring that up is, we have seen oftentimes firm, they sort of try out multiple things, and
Mm.
then a lot of money gets wasted,
Mm.
and then you sort of cash burn is a big problem, right, in startups. So I think staying focused, make sure that you're putting money in the right places for your business and for your startup. The second thing is how you hire and how you operate.
Mm.
I think being super lean, and we are also from a management perspective, we are very careful about not having a bunch of, let's say, middlemen, right, between
Mm.
people who are doing the work and us. I think not having a lot of layers,
Mm.
focusing on individual contributors who drive the impact, truly drive the impact, being judicious about how many people you actually need. Some of these we have learned through our experiences, in the last few years, but that's important, right? Just because you have 40 million doesn't mean you have to spend it in 2 years,
Mm.
right? So just being very, very careful about those things. But where there is an opportunity to have impact on your business, you have to invest
Then
big.
go hammer
And that's where,
across.
our investments in AI, right, they've always been big because we know that they can have massive impact on our company and also the country as a whole, right? So I think making these choices, while they seem very sort of standard, I think just being very, very careful about it throughout,
Mm.
make sure that you're, driving for impact in the long term. And again, no startup sort of goes from 0 to 100 in a couple of years, right? I think sometimes we get carried away with some of the news we read about how something became unicorn in a couple of years.
Mm.
Just being patient and staying with it in the long term by judiciously driving towards your goal, your customer, is important.
Well, that's lessons from the wise. And I especially echo with what you mentioned about rationalizing layers between the brand and the customer. And of course, being patient when it comes to opportunities, but then going ballistic when you spot one. Lots of interesting, well, lessons in excellence being shared by our leaders here. Well, it's time to get an X ray done for a deeper look at how AWS assisted HealthPlix in growing its operations on a mini segment titled Boost. Chaitanya, HealthPlix launched on AWS and, of course, chose it for a range of services related to database and analytics. The brand uses Amazon's simple storage service, S3, as a data lake. You use a data warehouse. You have Amazon Athena for serverless querying. Take us through how the scalability and infra support provided by AWS has improved your go to market timeline.
Absolutely. So I'll take the most recent launch that we have made, which is Halo, right? The ambient voice to text software that allows doctors to simply convert their patient conversations into prescriptions, right? So when we decided to pursue this, we knew that, this is going to be this could have a very big impact on doctor, adopting our software and sort of have a massive disruption in the healthcare space. But we were obviously not sure about how well some of these algorithms work, and we were not sure how much to invest, right? and
Hmm.
and and so for us, having a very flexible partner in AWS that allows us to commission machines quickly. So we needed GPUs, which are sort of hard to find.
Hmm.
We needed them quickly. We needed them dedicated for a day, for example, to run some experiments just to see, what the algos can do, right?
Hmm.
And try out a bunch of models. So I think that's where AWS has come in very handy for us, because we were able to quickly do a lot of small pilots, uh, see where the algorithm works, where it doesn't work, before we could sort of commission a full blown system to run Halo, right? So
Hmm.
I think agility and access to very high end computing enabled us to bring this product to market super quickly for us. I think uh, we launched the product from when we started to when we went live. It was maybe 2.5 months,
Hmm.
and that could not have been possible without a partner like AWS, right? So for us, and I think from now on, we're just talking to them about how we want to scale this even further,
Hmm.
and just getting these high compute machines in the market is not easy, right? So that I think in our next sort of big leap of scale that we're going to take, AWS is going to be a partner for us.
Fantastic. And as this data universe expands, you need a spaceship like AWS to take you to your destination. That's the message coming out of this segment. But before we exit this appointment with Chaitanya, let's get a dose of perspectives from him on the next growth drivers for HealthPlix and the role that it now sees itself playing in the digital healthcare narrative as India marches towards progress. All this on our final segment titled Orbit. All right, Chaitanya, you have a significant presence of doctors on the platform from tier 2 and tier 3 areas of India. They are leveraging HealthPlix to digitize their journey. Is this going to be the major growth driver, especially as the next billion user opportunity unfolds in India?
Absolutely. So if you see, our doctors who are, who have massive practices, they love the software the most because it significantly improves their efficiency, right? And if you go to tier 2 and tier 3 towns, you'll see that there are very few doctors, but the doctors who are good end up having massive practices. All the
Hmm.
patients in those towns go to those doctors, right? So they actually are very quick to adopt software, and because we are able to provide them a SaaS offering by sort of getting them onboarded digitally,
Hmm.
we're able to reach out to small towns all around the country, right? Today, tier 2, tier 3 towns constitute 70% of our doctors, so
Hmm.
big presence is already there, and we think that's going to continue to be the case, right? So any doctor anywhere in the country wanting and willing to use the software is able to quickly start using the software. um, and then all the Gen AI capabilities that oftentimes get focused and channeled into urban applications,
Hmm.
we're going to take it out and sort of make it widely available for tier 2 and
You're
3 towns
already
as
in
well.
20, available in 20 languages. So you are
Absolutely.
making an effort on that front.
Absolutely right. So whether it's Halo being able to do Hindi and English simultaneously, uh, so we are whatever is required in these small towns for the software to work,
Hmm.
it's already been built, and so expansion into that is going to happen. Outside of that, Gen AI allows us to provide conversational, interactive capabilities to both doctors and patients
Hmm.
in multiple languages, right? So whether it's a co-pilot for a doctor to ask questions about what's the right treatment to make here, whether it's about clinical nudging, all of that has to be conversational. It should be something that can be spoken in simple, plain language and
Hmm.
in the native tongue, right?
Hmm.
So
And there could be a translation layer. You could be a patient
absolutely,
in one state, speak one language. You're speaking to a doctor in another state who speaks, English or their regional language. But you have a translation layer which makes the process
absolutely,
seamless.
absolutely. So the Gen AI models that are out there in the market and the sort of customizations and iterations we have built on top of it
Hmm.
allows us to tap into this market beautifully.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Now, considering we are also seeing an impetus coming from policymakers, we discussed earlier, at least from the EMR perspective, now that the data landscape has expanded, there is policy impetus. What contribution do you see HealthPlix playing in improving the Indian healthcare ecosystem? Because while we have the broader mission of 2047 being a developed country, of course healthcare is going to play a very important part in achieving many of those objectives. So the role that HealthPlix sees itself playing in improving this ecosystem.
Absolutely, that's a good question. See, Indian government through Ayushman Bharat has already done a lot for this space, right? So they have set good standard protocols of how data should be stored, how data
Mhm.
exchanges should happen. Government is going to create that, has already created the health exchange. So a lot of good things have already in place, and what sort of is very encouraging is that a lot of the capabilities we had built independently in
Hmm.
privately based on our own understanding of the space, we have understood that actually works very well in conjunction with what the government is trying to do, right? So
Hmm.
patient being able to carry his or her own prescriptions, being able to pull it out when the patient switches the doctor, these are the capabilities that Ayushman Bharat wants firms to build, and those are things that we have already built
Hmm.
independently, right? So that's very encouraging for us. And while we are not also very sure if mandate is something that's going to drive adoption, our belief is that until you get the doctor uh, efficiency of using the software, until you solve for that, you're not going to get significant adoption, and that's where private firms like us can play a role in getting the doctor to adopt this software, right? So the government has provided the nice framework and infrastructure to make some of this happen, but the private companies have to go out there and get the doctors onto the software, right? And that's the role that we are willing to play.
Absolutely. And as we wrap up, my final question to you is that India is, in a sense, from a scale perspective, an innovation incubator for a lot of sectors. And healthcare, of course, presents many quotable quotes of what are happening currently and what could happen next. Now, in terms of what's next, I read some media reports that HealthPlix is planning to go global
Yeah.
and create some software for clients there. But my question is, what lessons do you think the India experience teaches you and applies in a global context? What would you say?
Absolutely. So, see, what we realized is, let me step back, right? So, when we were building HealthPlix, we were focused on the Indian doctor and we were focused on the Indian healthcare ecosystem. And in the context of India, as we were solving problems, we understood that the EMR we have built is actually spectacular. It's of global standard, if not better than a lot of the softwares out there in the West. So a lot of the capabilities we have built are, something that are easily translatable to a different country, right? And the reason that has happened is because India is a very tough place, and if you can solve for the doctor and the healthcare ecosystem here, it is widely applicable globally, right? What made us get to this point is the doctor first approach,
Hmm.
right? Instead of sort of having a sort of insurance firm first approach or like a hospital management approach, if you're having a doctor first approach, that approach works in every country, because
Hmm.
if you're able to get the doctor to use the software, then everything else flows, right? The information is in there and everything else flows, right? So I think that for us is the key, that even when we go to a different country where the dynamics could be different, you could have hospitals play a different role, insurance firms play a different role than they play in India, but as long as you understand that doctor has to ultimately do move his practice to the
Hmm.
software, right? Like if that happens, everything else flows from there. I think if you have that thought process, it'll work beautifully around the world.
Fantastic. And with that, we close the file on this conversation around building, managing, and scaling a startup that is bridging the gap between patients and doctors. Chaitanya, great to have you on Crafting Bharat. Thank you so much for sharing with us your insights and perspectives.
Thank you so much. I truly enjoyed the conversation. Glad to be here.
Well, we enjoyed it as well, and I'm sure our viewers did too. Thank you so much to our viewers for tuning in, all of you. Thank you so much. Till next time, though, this is your host, Gautam Srinivasan, signing off.